The Portland is Home team talks real estate. Whether you live here or you're on your way, Audra and Andrew Galler work hard to welcome you home. They make the whole real estate process attainable, educational, and fun. After all, it is the biggest transaction of your life. The Portland is Home team talks real estate. I'm Michelle Odell, your host. And now, Audra and Andrew Galler.
Hi, Michelle.
Hi, Michelle.
Hello, everybody. September 2nd, and we have a special guest today.
My name is Pooji Sher. I am the Vice President of Marketing, Color, and Brand for regional paint company Miller Paint.
And we're going to talk all about Miller Paint, colors, tricks and tips for people who don't really know a lot about color and design. We're going to answer a lot of questions and find out more about Pooji. But first, it's Andrew Galler's Market Minute.
Hey. So market continues to shift to slow, continuing on a trend. Wow. World's just changing on a dime.
Yeah.
It's an interesting time. Interest rates continuing to be volatile and a lot of fluidity, as in everything in our little world these days. Inventory continues to grow. One wonders, though, that in the first summer we've had since 2019, is the slowdown simply because of economics, lack of consumer confidence, increased interest rates, which is, of course, translates into erosion of purchasing power, making each pool of buyers in any specific price point smaller? I think that's a lot to do with it. But I also think that in the before times, August was a little sleepy anyways, because everybody was just trying to get their summer on. And I would argue this summer more than ever before, it was the first summer we could get together. Right now, at the end of August, in the area I monitor the most, and I preface it with that because when you all hear statistics, they'll be slightly different because I'm not looking at the entire Portland metro region in Southwest Washington. And that's what most of we all hear on our media. In the inner city core, right now, we have 31.8% more things for sale at the end of August than we did August 2021. So about a third more homes for sale. It's an incredible rise in inventory. And about 25% fewer pending sales. So demand is down a lot and supply is way up. And it'll be interesting to see a month from now what we're saying about it if our fall picks up in activity as it usually does. Not that I'm setting my watch to norms because we're in such a crazy time, but usually we do see people getting their head back in the game and working on finding their homes. So inventory right now, as measured by pending sales, is at 1.7 months, which by any metric is low, but it's 73% higher than it was this time last year. So that's a lot more, but it's still low. So I think the biggest difference is when we're talking to our sellers in terms of setting expectations. The expectation we had a year ago was just put the for sale sign in there. I'm going to go out to lunch and I'll have 10 offers. And
for your house.
We'll see how many firstborns get thrown at us. We'll just, whoever's baby has the cutest toes, we'll go with that offer.
That's my favorite line. Oh my gosh.
And then we'll be done. I'll go take a nap. And now, we used to call that, and I still do, frankly, a little bit of a dummy mark, or any dummy can sell a home. And now we're going to be getting back to basics. Call, text, email me today to find out about our aggressive, comprehensive, effective, and proven marketing plan, which ensures 100% buyer exposure. Thank you. I've worked on that line for years, usually with a hairbrush in my hand in front of a mirror. So that's just what I do. So, we're really getting back to basics, and really, our marketing really does help. So inventory up, demand down. Maybe it was because anybody who could find a flotational device and throw them on a body of water did that. And was at barbecues. Mm-hmm. And maybe now that the kids are back in school, we could stop going to Target to get one more thing for school, because apparently that's what we have to do 100 times. And that's the Market Minute, everyone.
Are there certain trends that you guys are seeing that are happening in Portland that don't reflect what's going on nationally? Specifically to the Portland real estate market, are there any trends or things that you can see or talk about that are different here than would be other places in the U.S.?
Yes, actually, because what I'm reading about right now, what do they call those? The pandemic towns, the boom, whatever, Boise.
The pandemic boom towns, or
yeah,
I know what you're talking about.
How rapidly our pendulums are swinging right now. A lot of the reasons why everyone left the big cities, Manhattan, LA, whatever, to go live in cities that were closer to nature, allowed time outside more, was more just easier to deal with what our world was during 2020, 2021. A lot of that need has gone down. So what I'm reading about is Boise and Phoenix, Spokane, and there are other cities that aren't coming to mind. There's a lot of talk about rapid depreciation in those markets. What I'm reading about right now in Portland, Zillow, for instance, I get a report on all the zip codes I find myself in, which is the majority of Portland Metro. They're predicting in the next 12 months a price depreciation right around 1% in many of the inner zip codes, or appreciation of less than 1%. So it's that delta between plus or minus 1% in the next 12 months for property values. And we're seeing in the Phoenix market and some of these other pandemic boomtown, whatever the word was, to be in low double digits. So I think it'll be interesting to see if that happens. I think some of that's going to be predicated on what happens with interest rates, inflation, and the economy as a whole. What I find interesting is that what I'm reading is the economy, the fundamentals of it are great, but the potential for lack of greatness exists. And I think that uncertainty, coupled with an election, who knows? I think that we're into 2020 V 3.0 in terms of who the heck knows what's going to happen.
What are you seeing as far as trends within the Portland market, as far as like where people are either wanting to move to? So are you seeing a shift in where people are wanting to buy homes compared to, let's say, the past 5 years pre-pandemic? And are you feeling like, based on the clients that you represent, are you representing more buyers versus sellers? Are you representing people that are interested in coming to Portland, and where are they interested in settling and landing? What neighborhoods? Or are you feeling like there's an increase in people who have been here and who potentially are wanting to leave, and where are they going?
Yeah, short answer to that question is yes. Thank you. And what I mean, Portland is not without issues, right? We still have a lot of homelessness issues, and you read about crime. We have a friend who moved to Bend, and I spoke with him recently. He's like, wow, reading the news still sounds terrible there. I don't know. Our day-to-day, our regular, hasn't changed one bit. Yeah, I see stuff, but I don't feel any differently about it. And okay, so that's the shortest answer. Some people are moving away to still go to grass is greener other places, but I also think that the issues Portland is facing is being faced by other cities. And so the quality of life afforded here relative to the Bay and LA, everyone who's moving here that I speak to can't get over how fabulous it is here. And
are those people that you're representing that are moving, are they just moving to different parts within Portland Metro, or are they saying, I'm done with Oregon?
Again, it's yes. And okay. I think we continue to see a lot of fluidity in people's lives, which has nothing and everything to do with this moment in time. So for instance, we're seeing a lot of people just going back to family. We have one client, they're going to Alaska. They're about to have their second kid, and they want to be close to family. It's where she grew up. I'm seeing a lot of that, and I'm seeing a lot of people, the people moving here are attracted to the quality of life Portland affords. And Pooji, to answer your question, I'm not seeing any huge different trends. I'm seeing a continuation of trends. The attractiveness of these inner city neighborhoods and the ability to ride your bicycle and lead an entire life without a car is off the hook here. Like, that is, I think, relatively unique to Portland, in that you can get your big bike and your kids can ride and you can go to grocery stores, school, work, entertainment, friends' houses. And the necessity for a car is way less than 100%, which I find to be the case in almost anywhere else I'd want to live. And that's the main attraction. And also the proximity to so much. We've beaten some of these topics dead on this show. The skiing, the surfing, go find some mushrooms in the forest, go berry picking. It's all so accessible. And so in terms of intra-city moving, I don't find it to be tied to someone's attracted to one specific neighborhood. I find it more like I've got clients who just can't really be in that size house anymore because they also had a second kid. And we're seeing a lot of people downsizing, which has nothing to do with the city per se, but more just about traditional life changes. And I also think that we are coming to a time where starting exactly at March 13th, 2020, there's been an outsized amount of deferred activity. And on lots and lots of layers and levels, people haven't done what they were planning on doing Q1 2020 and Q4 2019. All their plans got derailed because of the pandemic. And then in late pandemic, I'm sure we'll find terms for these later, but then where are we going to move? Because there's nothing for sale. And now, and so now we need to reset sellers' expectations that, again, you're not going to get 10 offers in the afternoon, but it's going to take whatever normal means amount of time to sell your home. And right now that answer is somewhere between 2 and 4 weeks. That is a mind-boggling, incredible, in terms of relativity, different amount of time. So
one of the other things we are seeing, Pooji, which is really interesting, 2 years ago, we were getting a lot of want to move out, want to get out of the city and have some space. And we have a handful of clients who are now coming back in closer because they want to be closer to services. Their kids are at an age where they want to be more in a neighborhood for friends. And so it is interesting. There is a little bit of I don't know how that correlates with everything with Portland and if people are moving out and all that. But it is interesting that I do feel that there was some movement out and some of those folks are now saying this was really great and this worked for us for those years, but now we want to be back in closer to things.
All right. Well, on that note, Pooji, go ahead and tell us a little bit about you, how you got involved with Miller Paint, and how you got involved with color in the first place.
Yeah. Well, I'll start from the beginning. So I grew up in a large Midwestern family, big family back in Wisconsin. And my grandfather was a fine artist and an architect. And so I was surrounded by creativity my whole life. And so he really instilled in me, and I felt the same way, being born into a family where creativity was really valued and how you could use your creativity in everyday life. So it didn't necessarily just have to be a hobby. It could actually be a profession. So based on that environment, I pursued a fine arts degree at St. Mary's College in South Bend, Indiana. And once I got that, I moved out to Portland, and I moved to Portland because it was and still is such a creative city. I saw very different at the time than what I experienced in the Midwest. It was just an entrepreneurial city. There's such a strong, independent, creative spirit here. So as a young artist, I could see people creating their own realities in a way that was really inspiring to me. So I moved out here. I didn't know how long I was going to be in Portland. It was just I felt the pull to the West, and so I followed it. And being here, I realized I was like, well, probably should get a job. So with a fine arts degree, I was like, ooh, yeah, well, what am I going to do? And it was a soul-searching journey for me. And I realized, the biggest reason that I pursued a fine arts degree was because the thing that I was most passionate about and still am is color. And in that journey, I was like, all right, well, why is color so important to me, and what is the vehicle for color in the world around us? And that's where I came to paint. And so paint is obviously, surrounds us on our four walls inside of our homes, on buildings outside of in all of our cities, and it has such an effect on us. And that, for me, was the impetus to start to pursue a career in paint and architectural coatings based on my passion and love of color. I've been in the paint industry now for over 20 years. I've had my own painting company. I've done color consulting. I've worked for more of a startup paint company that was based here in Portland. And when the opportunity to join the Miller Paint team, which is a legacy paint company here in the Pacific Northwest, making paints for 132 years. So we're celebrating 132nd anniversary this year and still manufacturing our paints locally. Actually, I'm in our factory right now. So it was just an opportunity, the rich history and the storytelling that was there, and the legacy of our founder, Ernest Miller, who was an artist and muralist in Portland in the 1890s. It was an opportunity that I couldn't pass up.
How many locations are there around here?
Yes.
Or is it global?
No, we're a regional paint manufacturer on purpose. So
Okay.
there's actually very few regional paint manufacturers left in the U.S. Our corporate offices and factory is here in Portland. We manufacture paint right by the airport. But we have a total of 57 stores in Oregon, Washington, and actually 2 in Idaho. So we're very much committed to our regional footprint in the Pacific Northwest.
Very nice. All right. Well, how about Audra? I want to hear the story about how the Portland is Home team talks real estate, but the Portland is Home team also helps you with design and the interior and the exterior. Talk about how the Portland is Home team color line came about.
Well, I don't remember exactly the full story, but I do remember sitting in a coffee shop with Pooji, and I feel like we paint a lot of homes when we're getting them ready for the market. It's just one of the things I think that makes the biggest impact. And, I was fluctuating. I would try this color and that color, and then I would modify colors. I modified a ton of colors in my own home where I would use the saturation at 50% or add in. And we were having coffee, and Pooji had brought up that we should just have a color line. And I never even knew that was an option. I didn't even know anything about why not do this. And I was super excited. I love color. I am not a trained fine artist at all. And in fact, I did no design training myself personally, but I worked in film and I worked in theater. The part that I liked most about that was the production, setting the stage, picking the colors, picking the furniture, making the story through you've got the actors, but then you've got the whole stage. I loved it. I loved everything about setting a stage, anything about design. I just found it was really so interesting. So when this was brought up, I got to go in and work with a fantastic gal over at Miller who was just brilliant on helping me sort of figure out some colors that I thought would be great for what we do. And a lot of the stuff that we do is very neutral, and it's done purposely because we're selling a house. And so I'm not looking at finding the perfect purple or something like that. It was really trying to find some really good whites and some good neutrals, and then some accent colors that we did a lot of front doors. We still do a lot of front doors. Just painting your front door, if it's already painted, is one of the biggest impacts I think that you can do walking up to a house. I've literally not had a budget to paint a full exterior and just did a front door and the trim around the front door, and it transforms the house. Just one little piece. It just depends on what your budget is. But sitting down and with this gal at Miller, and she was so patient and so kind and just really helped me figure out some good colors. And those colors I still use to this day, but I use them over and over and over, and I love them, and we recommend them. And so one of the things that was interesting is the whites. And we have 2 whites, and we have one that leans more cooler and one that's warmer. And you don't even notice it until they're next to each other or against something else that you really see the difference in how these colors read. So that's how we got started, and we just put it together. And, obviously Pooji was the cause for getting us to do this. And it was the best thing that literally, for color for us, that ever happened, because I love it. I love having color. And I didn't realize how much I loved color until I was complaining so much. Maybe that's why she told me to do it, because I was complaining so much.
Because you were making your own colors. You're like, I like this white. I want it to be a little bit more like this. And so I've kind of added some of this here. And I was like, Well, we can standardize those formulas. And so that's where, and we use this is one of the great resources of Miller Paint, is our color matching team at our Grand Avenue location is doing custom color matches. And so if you, for Audra's purposes, wanted to have that set of go-to colors that she could rely on over and over again because she trusts those colors, she knows what the undertones are, she knows how that color will look in different lights. And so to be able to have that formula within our system as a custom match, so that every time that she wants to repaint a house, she can just go in and order it, so it's saved within our system, so she can order that color and it's the same every single time. And so she has that confidence, and so she could just build on that custom match collection, which is what we did. And then so she has her, which we call drawdowns, which is a swatch term and a tool that's used more in the architectural realm. So it's a swatch of the color that the custom match, and it's on like an 8.5 by 11 sheet. And so Audra has those that then she can show clients, and so it's a bigger swatch of that color made out of real paint. And so that really simplified the process for her.
100%.
Audra wanting a more curated, simplified collection of colors for clients in this more niche situation where people are either buying or selling a home. And so you need colors that are neutral to be attractive to anyone that could see themselves reflected in that home space. But that is a trend that we're seeing in the paint industry as well, is that there's smaller, more simplified, curated palettes for consumers versus, which we have as well, but the 1,300 colors, thousands of colors to choose from. There comes a point where there's potentially, especially in architectural color in this situation, there's potentially too much choice and there's a paralysis there. And so that's a big part of my job, where I love color. Dealing in color and working with color every day is so fun. And I want that joy to be transferred to people and to not have it be so much of a scary process so people worry about making a mistake. But that's where there needs to be a lot of work done on the paint company side to really put out colors that scale well, that are true, in different forms of light, that undertones don't go one way or the other. And that's why it can be challenging to choose color just from a little teeny tiny chip, because you can't really see what those undertones are. So you could take what looks like a green home, paint it, in a bedroom, and all of a sudden it becomes more of a mint green and it looks like toothpaste on your wall, which is not what you wanted because of the undertones. Maybe there were more yellow undertones in that. So it was pushing that green, to more of a lime color versus their blue undertones, which was making it more minty. And so just really being able to look and understand what are those undertones in a color chip, it's really hard for people to see that, especially if you don't work in color every day.
One thing I was really impressed with Audra about the whole color line thing, as I recall, one of the bits I heard about how it came about was Audra's thing when she was helping our sellers prepare their homes for market, that it's so obvious to me, Audra, once you said it out loud, was that this color on the east side of the house looks one way, but on the west side looks a different way, because obviously when the light's different, the color's different. The color's an objective thing, but when the subjectivity of how our eyes perceive light and color, how that color is affected by the different lights and the different tonality and color temperature of light at the sun at different times of the day and on a cloudy day. And Audra, that's what I recall. I'm not sure I got this right, but that's what I recall you reacting to, was that one color I like a lot, I remember you saying, looked different on the other side of that house, and you wanted that tonality of that color to be a little different to really make that room shine with the light that room gets. And I thought that was remarkable.
I love working with Miller because we, as Portland is Home Team, but also as our brokerage Realty Works group, we want to keep everything local as much as we can. Our gifts are local. We source, other vendors that locally made products. And so Miller was a no-brainer for me and Andrew, because they're a local company. They're doing exactly what we're doing. We're a Pacific Northwest company. Pooji, I'd like to hear a little bit about your thoughts of color in the Pacific Northwest and how they read, because you have a new color line as well, and how you got in, how you selected the colors for the new color line.
So our new color line is called the Northwest Color Collection. So it's deeply rooted in a sense of place for us. I mentioned earlier that we're in our 132nd year of making quality paints in the Pacific Northwest. Our founder, Ernest Miller, is an artist and muralist in Portland. And so his journey from Germany to Portland, he actually was a scenic painter in Portland and started painting houses on the side. And he bought a stone mill near the Central East Side and started grinding his own pigments and making his own paints, because there was all the paint at that time. There was not a paint manufacturer in the Pacific Northwest. So all the paint had to be shipped from the East Coast. So there were obviously oftentimes delays and shortages. And once the paint was here, there were performance issues because of our rainy climate. And so there wasn't the durability, the color fastness. So he started making his own pigments, grinding his own pigments and making his own paints and painted houses. And people in Portland started to recognize the quality of the paints that were being used and started asking for, I want that Ernest Miller's paint. And that's how Miller Paint Company was born. So this new Northwest Color Collection is part of that legacy. And one of the ways that the Northwest Color Collection really fills a gap within the Miller Paint color offering is that it is reflective of the filtered light that we have here in the Pacific Northwest. So if you look at this color palette compared to the other color palettes we have our Color Is collection, we call it, which is 1,300 colors based on the color wheel, but a lot of very saturated colors, vibrant colors, clear colors. There's brighter colors within the Color Is fan deck. We've got the Historic Color Collection, which is based on trends of historic colors from the early 1800s in America. And then we've got our Evolution Color Collection, which is a beautiful range. It's a little bit softer, but it's more mid-tone colors. So this new Northwest collection was basically in a response to our current color trends and also the light of the Pacific Northwest. So current color trends, we'll just touch on that briefly, is Audra mentioned it as well, is the importance of white. So we needed more offerings of whites within our palette. So there's a strong collection of whites within the Northwest Color Collection. There's also complex neutrals. So by complex neutrals, I mean it's a color that's actually kind of hard to describe. Is that a gray? Is that a beige? Is that a tan? Is that a black? Oh, wait. Maybe that's a navy blue, or maybe that's a dark forest green. And so it's changes more in value and tone than necessarily in hue. And some really moody dark. So I'm sure, Audra and Andrew, you have seen really there's this spectrum between, especially on exterior houses, going either really light and bright or super dark. And so we didn't have those really moody darks in our other palettes. So this new Northwest collection really filled in the gap of what some of those other color palettes were missing. So they're both timeless and contemporary at the same time.
I love that.
And there's 132 colors, and it's our 132nd anniversary. So there's that too.
Oh, I love that. The blog on the Miller Paint website is fantastic. It's a really wonderful resource people should know about, because you break things down into topics, and you have your whole color tour.
Oh, yep, color tours.
Yeah, it's a great website. Definitely check it out when you get a chance, millerpaint.com.
Yeah, the color tours section of the website, it highlights different people in their homes. And so it's really there to give people inspiration around how transformative color can be. And so if they're thinking about doing a painting project, it's great to see what others have done in their homes to give you those ideas. So it's kind of like our own little special Pinterest page.
Color is just one of those, things in the world that, from my perspective anyways, who pays attention to it? It's well, yeah, there's 10 colors, whatever, what's a big deal? But the reality of it is when you start drilling down, and it's always one of those things where it's the world would be such a terrible place without an army of Poogies over there just concocting different colors, and that they come in and out of style, and that, I don't know, I think it's so fascinating.
You can actually make a lot of mistakes with color. That's one of my questions. I want to talk about your charitable works, because you do great things for the community. But since we're still talking about color, what are some of the big mistakes people do with paint?
Well, I would say probably the biggest mistake is that people don't test a color before they either paint a whole exterior or a whole interior of a home. And that goes back to what we talked about with undertones that are really hard to see. So I think the biggest color mistake, I don't know if you would necessarily say it's a mistake, but it's not what you thought it would be. And what your expectation is and what it turns out to be. And there is those two things, light and scale, that affect color that you can't really control. And so you just need to see what that color will do in certain environments and certain circumstances. So I would say that's not necessarily a mistake. It's just a change in expectation.
I think that color is one of the biggest stumbling blocks for people too. It's very overwhelming. And a lot of it is because you don't want to make a mistake. You don't want to put a color up. And a lot of it is we work with a lot of clients every year. And every single one of them, the question is, I don't know what color to paint my house. The thing about what I like that you said with this Northwest collection is you're showing how to use it in people's homes. People like to see that. They like to see, well, what is it going to look like? Because it's hard for people to look at those little books and look at that little teeny tiny piece of color and then pick their color from that. It's a hard thing. It's one of the reasons why for us, for listing a home, and our collection is called At Home. I think Pooji actually came up with the name, which was amazing. I know how those colors read. I know that if I use cornice or mantle, I know what color we're going to get. I love that you're showing interiors with this.
Also, they're not isolated. So one of the most exciting things for me is about my job is color relationships. And so how do colors affect each other? That's where you go back to color theory. If you have complementary colors next to each other, they become more activated, they become brighter. Or maybe two colors next to each other, one will pull out some of the undertones more than next to another color. And, it's not just painted surfaces that we're talking about, which Audra knows since she's, goes floor to ceiling, inside and out on homes. It's the tile, it's the cabinets that you can't paint or change. It's the flooring, it's, all of these different things. And sometimes you have something in a home like a countertop that you can't change. And this is what we work with a lot with people with existing features of a home that they can't change. And so if you can use color to either minimize one of those things or to amplify it, what do you want to have stand out? So do you want something to look like maybe you have walls that have more imperfections on it? That's also where you can get into sheen. What's the appropriate sheen? If you don't want a lot of light reflection to show a lot of imperfection on the wall, go with a lower sheen, like an eggshell or a flat, to minimize that. So that's where paint can be your best friend in home renovations, depending on what it is that you want to highlight and what your budget is. It can be really transformative, even outside of the color aspect.
On an actual technical level, do you suggest, when you said the biggest mistake people is they don't do a test on a part of the wall or part of the outside, do they buy like a little can of paint? You tell them to do it like a 3x3, use up that paint.
We have samplers that are actually quart size. Those are really pretty substantial so that you can do large swatches. I think that's maybe another mistake that people make, is that they don't do their swatches large enough. So that's really where you want to make them. I mean, I say at least 12 inches by 12 inches, but ideally like 2 foot by 2 foot. And especially with exterior, it's ultra important. And like Audra was saying, on different sides of the house, so you can look at it in different lights, in different contexts. And from far away. I mean, I think it's also great, one thing to take into consideration, not that you would paint your house based on what, other houses in the neighborhood look like, but just to see it in the context of your neighborhood, because we are all living in community. And it's like, if you have a row of 5 blue houses, do you want that? Or do you, would you rather stand out? It doesn't matter, one way or the other, but it's just thinking about your home in the context of a community or a neighborhood. Another kind of challenge with exterior paints is that because there's so much natural light and the scale is so much bigger, colors that you're choosing from a little chip become much more saturated and lighter. So colors get blown out and they look more vibrant or more intense. So I always tell people, just as a starting point, choose a color that's more muted and darker than you think that you want when you're starting this process, because it's really going to change when you take it outside.
I would like to know a little bit about your charitable organizations. One of my questions was, what makes Miller Paint stand out from the rest of the companies that do that? And you've kind of answered that. Number one, you keep it local. You're only involved in this portion of the country. You're not all over the world. You have a great origin story with the artist and muralist Ernest Miller, and you also do a lot of charity work. That was one of the first things Audra said to me when we thought about having you on as a guest. She was like, you should see what they do for the community, which is a lot. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, it's also the community work that we do is also one of the favorite parts of my job. The work that we do with mural organizations within Portland and the Pacific Northwest. Some key projects that come to mind right now that we're working on specifically in Portland. We're working with RAC, Regional Arts and Culture Council, to do 2 murals on the side of our Hollywood store, working with 2 emerging artists within the Portland community. So that's a very cool project. It's called Going Public. And the 2 artists, the concept that we set forth for them as a paint company, we said we love color. We're passionate about color. We use the color wheel every day. So we'd like, as the concept for your mural, to see what your interpretation is of the color wheel. So we're just right now in the design process with these 2 artists. And so the project's going to start in September. So we'll have 2 murals on our Hollywood building. And then we're also working with Portland Street Art Alliance to work with 3 also emerging artists to do their interpretation of our founder's story. We have a video of Ernest Miller's founding story on our website. And so to work with the artists to watch that documentary and do their interpretation of Miller Paint's founding story. So 3 artists that will be on our Pine Street building, which is across the street from our Grand Avenue location. So we're going to paint 2 full sides of that building coming up here this fall. And so we're a sponsor of Portland Street Art Alliance for the regular mural work and projects, and then just different community organizations anytime there's like city repair project with street paintings and different things like that. So staying close to the community and continuing that legacy of making our world a brighter place is really close to our heart as a company, but also me personally.
I love that. And as a person who's relatively new to Portland, one of my favorite things is to drive around the city and see all the amazing mural action around here.
No, it's incredible.
So I was going to ask you also quickly, like, what are the color trends for 2023 that you're seeing?
Yes.
Color trends for interiors are moving much warmer. So we're starting to see peaches, beiges becoming more incorporated into neutral. So getting away from really stark whites and cool grays that have been ubiquitous for, quite a few years now for interiors. So it's our color trend forecasting looking forward to 2023 is some of those warmer neutrals that would be great as all over colors. So as then an alternative to the stark whites and the cool grays. 2022 is a color called Desiree, which was a dusky lavender, almost bordering on mauve color. It's more of an accent, but also representative just in general of hope. Coming out of the pandemic, and suggested to use it as an accent. You guys know where Bloke Botanical is? Right down off of Mississippi. It's a beautiful outdoor garden spot, garden design center. And they painted on their potting shed the color of Desiree. It's just surrounded by amazing foliage. So we did our photo shoot there for 2022. So that kind of dusky, mauvey, purple color just popped against the green, which back to color trend or complementary colors in the color wheel. Those 2 colors really activate each other.
And what's 2023?
So we haven't released it yet, but it's from the new Northwest Color Collection. And it's going to be a light terracotta color.
Ooh.
That's exciting.
That's up your alley.
Yeah,
That is totally me. Oh, I'm so excited to see what it is.
Stay tuned, everyone.
Like I said, the Miller Paint website has a lot of great info, before and after pictures, designer Q&A. So don't be overwhelmed when the time comes to paint. Just talk to these people, talk to the professionals, talk to Audra, talk to Pooji. Don't take it on all on your own, because it is overwhelming and it is scary.
Ask for help. It's okay. It's okay to ask for help. And if your friends need help, call us in. Like we can call them. You don't even need to be part of it. If it needs to be incognito. Family, friends.
That's right. Okay. Yes. Anything else?
No, just thank you so much, Pooji. It was wonderful talking with you on this.
Appreciate your time.
It was great talking with you, too.
All right, everybody. Have a great month, and we'll talk to you very soon. Thanks again, Pooji.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pooji. Thank you, Michelle.
Thanks, Michelle. Thanks, Pooji.
Thanks for listening to the Portland is Home Team Talking Real Estate podcast. For more info about Audra and Andrew, finding your next home, or selling your current home, visit their RealtyWorks website at realtyworksgroup.com. And check them out on Instagram at PortlandIsHome. Be sure to subscribe on Apple, Spotify, Google, or wherever you get your podcasts. For help with your podcast, find us at Modcast Productions or modcastproductions.com.